23 degrees Celsius in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily, your daily dose of sunshine. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning and welcome to the program. It's 26 degrees here in Lagos and today is the 16th day in the month of October 2025. And something just happens to be happening this very day, Maupe, in Abuja.
Indeed, Ayo. It is all eyes on the Senate today as Professor Joash Amupiton will be screened by the National Assembly today, or shall I say more specifically the Senate, as they are the ones who normally screen ministerial nominees, and all such nominees is approved by the president. So specifically, all eyes on the Red Chamber. We'll be waiting to see not just his credentials or what exactly his manifesto, even though he's not campaigning, what exactly he intends to bring to bear to INEC, the changes that maybe he'll be making or the reforms he will be bringing on board, because clearly everyone knows that INEC needs to work very hard to regain once again the confidence and the trust of the people. We've heard over and over again, especially as we see more and more defections to the All Progressives Congress. We've heard opposition parties say, well, this is not going to be between us and the All Progressives Congress. It's going to be between the All Progressives Congress and the Nigerian people. And central to that is going to be the role that the electoral umpire plays in determining at the end of the day who exactly will be holding the reins of leadership at this country in 2027. So we'll be waiting to see that screening. Television houses are going to be bringing you the pictures live, including yours truly. Channels Television, we're going to be live for you at the National Assembly today. So we're going to ask you to keep it locked on here as we bring you the live coverage screening of Professor Joash Amupiton, SAN, as he stands before the Senate today to, tell them what exactly he intends to bring on board. Ayo, is this something you are looking forward to? What do you think we might be listening to?
Well, absolutely every Nigerian, I'm sure you would imagine, they are curious as to what is likely to happen. This, with the first chairman of INEC in this republic was Maurice Iwu, Professor Maurice Iwu, followed by Professor Tahiru Jega. Of course, you always had that interim acting chairman at some point. And then we had Professor Mahmoud Yakubu as well. And now, here we are. And we hear that Professor Yakubu was the first to have spent 10 straight years. The things that bedeviled the Maurice Iwu regime didn't quite bedevil the Jega regime. In fact, there are those who point to the fact that the most spectacular thing happened during the Jega regime. And curiously, a host of people were praising Professor Yakubu for some of the initiatives, some of the innovation that came under his terrain. And you asked a very important question, Mark, what's Professor Amupiton going to be bringing to the table? It's a question every Nigerian would be willing and looking forward to how he's going to respond to, particularly because I saw that part of the things that perhaps qualified him, beside the fact that he's an erudite lawyer and a learned silk, is the fact that he had been part of some kind of law reform committees previously. I do not recall quite clearly which one and what were some of the recommendations in that electoral reform. But then there are quite a list, about where that we've been talking about for years, a separate electoral reform, electoral offenses commission. We've talked about unbundling INEC and all those things. We've talked about how the results from INEC and the state independent electoral commissions will be quite clear, quite close, so that we don't have differences. How all those things are going to work out, I guess there are some of the things that I hope will be able to answer. He will be able to answer when the INEC, when the Senate speaks with him today. And I also hope, Mark, that it's not just going to be one of those bow and go moments.
Well, that's something that a lot of Nigerians will be hoping for as well, that it would not be, oh, Professor, take a bow and go, that there will be a real conversation as to what his own perceptions of INEC have been from the outside and what changes he believes can be made on the inside to make sure that Nigerians have the confidence that they need to have in their electoral umpires so that they can be more participatory, or will I say our democracy can be more participatory in nature. Well, Ayo, on that note, we'll take a break now. We'll be having deeper conversations around this, particularly with the eye from the outside. So our next conversation is going to be with a Nigerian in diaspora, a Nigerian who has lived in Nigeria many years, but is now outside of the country, has participated in the political process there, has won a seat, and perhaps can tell us what the gaps we're noticing in our own electoral or political environment is, and perhaps some of the solutions that we can begin to explore. Starting our conversation with Mr. Ayo Owoduni, who is a city councillor, Ward 5, the city of Kitchener, and he joins us via Zoom from Ontario in Canada. Thank you so much for joining us, Councillor. It's good to see you online. I'm sure that you are watching very closely events that have been developing in Nigeria. And in recent times, a lot of that conversation has centered around fears of Nigeria descending to a one-party state. As being no stranger to the politics in Nigeria, it's not the first time we've seen that. Remember that there was a time when the People's Democratic Party once boasted, when people were asking or wondering if Nigeria was ever going to have a strong opposition. It once boasted that it was going to be in power for 60 years. But in 2015, it was routed out of power. This is 2025, just 10 years after. And we're saying that the PDP center doesn't seem to be able to hold anymore. And, you know, a lot of the governors on the platform, elected on the platform of that party, are now defecting to the All Progressives Congress. As a Nigerian watching from the outside, how has this come to you?
I want to first say it's a great pleasure being here. Thank you very much for having me. You know, usually it is very healthy in a democracy when you have a strong opposition voice, because one of the key things that they're able to do is always, as we say, hold the feet to the fire of the current party in government, because they are always there to constantly challenge the government. They're doing deeper research. They're finding the loopholes. They're finding the challenges, and they're doing all that they can to push and to ensure that the government is doing the best that they can. In fact, some people always say the opposition's party's job is to ensure that they're poking holes at every potential policy that the current government is putting in place. They're challenging them repeatedly. Any mistake that is being made is being really micromanaged and looked at in depth over a period of time. And that continually puts pressure on the government to ensure that they're doing the right things by the people and for the people. So it is a bit concerning, in my opinion, when you have a situation where you have a potential one-party state. Defections is something that has been happening across the world. In Canada, there's so many Canadian politicians over the past 30 years that have defected from one party to another. In fact, if you go as far back as 2005, 2006, we had politicians who defected to the main party and ended up becoming cabinet members, as a matter of fact, right after they defected. So things like this happen. However, they are few and far in between here in Canada and in other countries, and it becomes a major deal when it does happen, whether it's because of an ideological shift, lack of alignment. But for me, this is concerning, because who will be the voice of the opposition? Who will put the feet to the fire? Who will challenge policies? Who will do their research and let us identify some of the gaps that we're possibly not noticing on the outside looking in? So those are major things that we should all be talking about repeatedly to ensure that people are aware of what is going on right now.
Well, part of what has happened in Nigeria, or part of our political development, is that people always say that our political parties are not exactly based on ideology, that, you know, our needs are still so basic that we have not seen any real demarcation or any real difference in the ideologies, if any exist, in what the parties espouse. So do you think that it's really a problem in our part of the country, or do you think that political parties then need to sit and decide what precisely their ideology is. I know that the political parties will, they will disagree with you. The All Progressives Congress likes to say, oh, we are the progressive party. They say, oh, the PDP is a little more conservative. But given how we've seen political development in our climate, especially since the return of democracy in 1999, do you really see any difference?
So when you join politics over here, one of the first things that you tend to notice is when you go on a website called voteforcompass.com, I always encourage a lot of Nigerians that move into the diaspora to check it out. When you look at the federal political parties, we have over 44 key areas that you will probably have to decide where you fall. Do you fall for more immigration? Do you fall for less immigration? Are you pro-abortion? Are you not pro-abortion? Do you want more businesses being taxed, or do you want businesses to have the freedom so that you have more money coming into the economy and trickling through the economy? Should more middle-class individuals be taxed, or should they be taxed less? So all of these different, what we call ideologies on this end, tend to, by the time you start looking and identify some of these key places, you as an individual, you have a choice. Which of these areas would you like to be a part of? And may I also point out to people that when you move up a socioeconomic status, when you move perhaps from one state or one city to another, depending on where you are, there is a likelihood that the party that you end up joining or staying with might eventually switch, not necessarily just because of the ideology, but also because of your need at that current point in time. If you were not a business owner at some point in time and then you become a business owner, there's a likelihood that your ideology will shift. So at the end of the day, it's a party issue. It's also a people issue. Whenever I'm having conversations with people here, whether I'm going door-to-door knocking or speaking to constituents, people want to know which areas you fall, and people want to know on what side of those things that you fall, because they want to know, does your ideology align with my ideology at the end of the day? So yes, there is the people side of politics, but then there is also the policy and ideology side of politics. So the people need to start asking these types of questions of their political leaders, and political leaders as well. When I ran for a federal MP last year, I had to fill out it was like an 80-page document where I had to fill out a lot of information about myself, and you get interviewed, there are conversations that you have before you're allowed to even step into the race. So at the end of the day, there is the people side of politics where the people need to start demanding more from their politicians. But then there is the political side as well, where we need to ensure that political parties, the people that you're pulling in, they fit with your ideology, and you're able to spell out what those ideologies are, and we're able to ask questions. If you come here and you go on any major political party's website, you will see their policy statements. You will see where they stand on over 100 different issues. You can download it. You can read it, because it gives you exactly what it is that they're aligning with, the ideology that they're facing. And we need to get to that level of politics as well. But many times it takes the people to demand it of the politicians. It takes the media to be able to challenge them a lot of these things. And then in turn, they're able to share a lot of these things with us as well.
Well, now you just mentioned the website. It's prompted me to go and see if our political parties even have a functional website. Well, thankfully, at least one or two of them do. But I'm not in this conversation alone. I know that my colleague is awfully proud and very happy to see you on the program this morning. Ayo, I'm going to be handing over to you for your questions as well.
Well, thank you, Mokwe. First of all, we're first name Palace, so I think that's a first good step. So, Mr. Woduni, I don't know, should I be calling you honorable as well now? Because anyone who has won even as little as, well, as much as councillor seat in Lagos, Nigeria, you have to change the person's designation from Mr. to honorable. Is that in order as well?
For those of you watching, Ayo Makinde used to be my boss. He still owes me lunch and dinner. My Oga at the top, you don't need to call me honorable at all. Ayo is still my name. This is just a political title that lasts 4 years, so Ayo is still the name.
But don't forget that here now you are my guest, and I have to accord you the respect that you deserve as my guest. So, but let's get into the issues. You know, there's something that you said earlier. Perhaps one of the angles to look at this, well, you have been on this side, having to question politicians. And so maybe we should talk about that first of all, because some people may not know that you are also a broadcaster, and I know that you never really stopped broadcasting. So from where you are now, what changes have you observed? I mean, having been from the one that questions politicians to the politician being questioned by media practitioners, what's the difference that you have seen?
You know, very interestingly, on this side of the ballgame, one of the things that I notice is whenever media reaches out to me when they're bringing me on for an interview, immediately on our side, there is a sense of concern and nervousness because you're going to be asked direct questions. So immediately that I get a message asking me to come in for an interview, my team goes to work. We have a media team that starts to pull the numbers and the research together for me. You have the PR team that is standing on the sideline waiting and supporting. So even if I'm going in for the TV or the radio interview, or I'm sitting online for the Zoom call or the phone call, I have all the numbers by my side. I have the technical team that is ready there with me. We have gone through the numbers together just to make sure that when I am on, I'm able to speak with competence, I'm able to speak with confidence, and I am representing the city properly, I'm representing my constituents properly, and they're able to hear from their leader. My phone number is actually public information, so my constituents can reach out to me anytime or send me an email to share their concerns and thoughts. So you cannot go on TV or on radio and just, as we say, talk anyhow. So it's really good for me to be able to see things from a completely different side. You know, we had to go through detailed media training in preparation for a lot of these conversations. And even after the conversations, we have our debriefs. Should there be a press statement that should be released to clarify some of the statements that I made? Was there anything that I said that was off? Did I confuse anyone? Was there any context issues that needs to be addressed? All of that needs to be discussed. Why? Because the media is very powerful. The media is able to hold us to account, able to challenge me in many ways. And the worst part is, what is this individual talking about when I leave the radio show as well, or when I leave the TV show? So we always want to make sure we're putting our best foot forward in line with that. So it's quite interesting for me switching from one side to another. But it also helps me appreciate the work of the media now that I sit on the other side. So I tend to just smile when they're having a conversation with me, because I'll say, it used to be me doing this back in the day. But it's great to see someone else doing it and holding us to account. But that's the beauty of democracy. Yeah. That's what it's supposed to be. Someone has to hold me to account with things like this.
You know, I've been an advocate, Soduni, of... I really wish I could pull all politicians in Nigeria into a room and sit them down and help them understand the communication process. I mean, you've just detailed something that a good number of people will be wondering, does that happen in Nigeria? Do you see that kind of rigor? I mean, you get an invitation. Of course, in here, we hardly give the time. We could just call you within 24 or even 18 hours or 6 hours and say you're coming on air. And, gratefully, many of them actually grant those interviews, particularly when the issues are hot. And then we just want to get their feedback as quickly as possible. Do you see those rigor? Do you see that kind of rigor? Do you, from your experience, being an anchor here in Nigeria, do you see the kind of rigor you put into responding to public inquiries through media organizations? Do you see that kind of rigor from your experience here in Nigeria? And how do you think, if you don't, that can be championed in a way that we can use information that politicians give us to build trust?
For me, at the end of the day, one of the key reasons why we do it here is the fear of the ripple effect afterwards. Because I know if I say something that is out of line, if I say something that is not, I'm misinformed, or I give the wrong information, or I tell a quote unquote a white lie, and you're caught on air with things like that, I could be asked to resign. My team could be challenged on that. So we always want to make sure that we have the right information. We're putting the right foot forward in line with that. So the ripple effect danger is such a big deal here that you don't want to be the person on a repeated 15-minute cycle of news for the rest of the day where that quote is repeated over and over again. You don't want integrity commissioner start an investigation on you. You don't want the ethics commissioner, who are independent parties and who do investigation when people feel like you're out of line. You don't want a freedom of information request. And by the way, when a freedom of information request is pulled on you, you have 48 hours to pull out all the information you have in your email, your work phone number. You're required to provide that information when it's requested for, and members of the media house and they have the power.
This is quite rigorous. So you don't see that happening here on our side?
I do believe that it can happen, but it requires the laws. But unfortunately, the people that create the laws are the people that you're hoping to hold accountable at the end of the day. So it can be tough for that to happen. I do remember, Mr. Makinde, from many, many years ago. You see how I'm calling you Mr. Makinde, my oga? I do remember from many, many years ago, when the former governor of Lagos State did have a public speaking coach who was working with him. I knew the public speaking coach that was working with him on a consistent basis back then. But I do not know if those types of trainings continue to today. However, they're so important. When I first won, all the politicians in this area were brought together for media training. It was an all-day media training. And then you have a media team that works with you regularly as well. And it all comes down to the ripple effect, the danger of the ripple effect, and the fear of the ripple effect from our end that creates that. So, and I think that also has to be replicated.
So you're saying essentially that one way that we can enforce Section 22 of the Nigerian Constitution, which is where the Constitution prescribes that the press, radio, television, and print should be holding public officials accountable. You're saying that one way that politicians or public officials can do that is for them to go for media or communication training, because it is one thing to push out information to people. It's another thing altogether for people, for that information to resonate with people. So you're saying that without that communication training, our politicians are in default?
Without that training, at the end of the day, it's important for everyone to realize that a politician's words are powerful. And when there is a lack of trust in politics, it creates a ripple effect in the economy. It creates a ripple effect amongst the people. Politicians create stability. Stability helps the economy in so many ways. It brings in foreign direct investments. It brings in business leaders from different places. It helps with your economy at the macro level and also at a micro level. It is extremely crucial that every country, including Nigeria, ensures that every politician is trained on how to address the people, having conversations with the media, the importance of transparency with government as well. All of those things are crucial because it plays a key role on how the country is even viewed from the outside.
How about the role of political parties? Because the politician is just one individual, right? The political parties, the platform upon which they have to get into office, particularly here in this country. I don't know how it works where you are, but how about the role of political parties in ensuring not just that they field the right people, but that they field the right people, the right pegs in the right sizes in the whenever they have to do some of this? Because a number of people wonder sometimes, how could you field such a person who is inept, so to speak?
I would say the beauty of the Canadian politics, that's why I love what I do and I love the people that I do it with over here. First of all, it starts at the grassroots level. And what I mean by that is I'm a local councillor in a city. And from the minute that I won, number one, we went through detailed training. Number two, I have a media team that I work with. This is at the local level. We're not talking at the state level or what we call a provincial level or at the federal level yet. We're still talking about the local level. And another beauty of it is at the local level, we are not required to, quote unquote, be part of a party. In fact, it is frowned upon for you to talk about your party at the local level, because it gives political parties a place to recruit from. It gives political parties a place to start looking for raw talent, good talent that they can start poaching, reaching out to, having conversations with to try to have them join their party. So from the grassroots, you're already being developed for provincial politics and also for federal politics. So by the time you get to that level, you've been honed over a period of time. You've had a chance to work with people. You have mentors at the federal and provincial level. You have people that are recommending and pulling you up. So am I saying everyone here is perfect? Absolutely not. However, when individuals are getting to that level, they've spent time in media training. They've spent time reading policies and debating policies. They've spent time working with someone that is on the opposite end of an ideology, and you have to somehow build the emotional intelligence to be able to work with those people. You've spent time going to constituents, taking phone calls, having conversations with them, knocking on doors. You've done all that over a period of time, so you've been prepared over years for you before you get to that federal level. And by the way, when you do get to the federal level or the provincial level and you're running for office, people are looking at your track record, even things as small as your attendance level. How many times did you attend meeting over 4 years? How many did you miss? Did you miss any meetings? Did you join online or did you show up in person? All of that is recorded. If anyone gives me any money over $150, I'm required to declare that number. And it is public information on our website where anyone can go on and see the person that gave me the money, the phone number, the email address, the business name of that person as well, and the reasoning behind them giving me that gift. So Ayamaki David, are looking to send me any gifts. Your information will be online. But at the end of the day, all of these things are important, and it helps to hone us for the work that we do at the federal level. Most times, we can identify those people that did not go through the grassroots. It's always easy to be able to identify them because they didn't go through that granular developments that took place over a period of time.
I'm sure Ayo has taken note of the threshold, where his information will now be the knowledge of your voters, or let's say of your constituents in Kitchener. But let me quickly take you up on this issue of diaspora voting. Ayo and I did talk about how Professor Amupiton, who is the new INEC, he's not yet the, let's say, INEC chair designate. He's been appointed, but he's yet to be confirmed by the Senate, and he's going to be going for screening today. As a Nigerian in diaspora, there have been questions around diaspora and voting. Is it something that you think we need to make happen? Because there are those who say, yes, while diaspora voting might be good, it might not be good for everyone. That we will need to differentiate between Nigerians like yourself, who are very aware of what our politics is or what it is like. You've been here in Nigeria, you've lived here many years, you've watched our democratic development, and you're still keeping tabs home. But there are Nigerians who are just Nigerians by birth. I mean, the fact that both their parents are Nigerians, and they're not really interested in Nigeria. They don't know much about the country. Should we throw our diaspora voting open to everyone? Do we put our country at risk by doing that?
I do not think we put our country at risk when it comes to diaspora voting. I think it's something that is very important because just because people are outside of the country, people are still remitting millions and millions of dollars back to the country on a monthly basis, as a matter of fact, whether it is they're providing for their families, providing for friends, or they're investing in businesses as well. Look, if people are investing in businesses, if people are buying land, if people are taking care of their family and doing all of those things, they have vested interest in the success of their country. Yes, we are not home does not mean we do not pray for home. Yes, we're not home does not mean that we are not checking in on a regular basis. My mother is still in Nigeria, my sister, my brother, family members, in-laws, they're still in Nigeria. So you always want to ensure that you pray for the success of Nigeria. In fact, I come to Nigeria about 3 times a year regularly to ensure that my mother is getting much older. So I always have to make sure that I'm coming in to see her regularly. So all of these things are really crucial and important. Albania is one of the recent countries that recently just introduced diaspora voting for country members that are outside of the country, and it wasn't perfect. They had a lot of flaws, a lot of issues that they are dealing with through the online voting. But it's something that they are working through. So I don't expect it to be perfect immediately, but I do expect that as we create it, people will show interest. People want the success of their countries, regardless of whether they're outside or in. And I think we should give them an opportunity to be part of the electoral process. One of the dangers in democracy is when we feel that people will not care, because once we have that mindset, you start to create that exact thing that you do not want, which is people not caring. We want to ensure that people care, people pay attention. I know of people who fly to Nigeria to vote during an election. There is actually a particular Nollywood actress who lives in Kitchener who flies down to Nigeria for elections time. She helps with monitoring, she does her voting, and then she comes back after elections are done. People are that passionate about it. People want to ensure that we have great leadership and they're represented well. People want to come home, whether it's for vacation or investments or whatever it is. And we want to ensure that they are part of that political process. We should not keep them away from that at all.
Well, it's been wonderful speaking with you, Mr. Ayo Owodunni, City Councillor, Ward 5, City of Kitchener, speaking with us from Ontario in Canada. Thank you so much for your time with us this morning, and all the very best to your constituents and also to your mom.
A great pleasure having me. Thank you for having me.
Well, we take a break now. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at trending matters with Laolu Akonde. Please stay with us.
Today, the 15th day of October 2025, I wish to formally notify you that in keeping with the extant protocols, I, Governor Doye Diri, do hereby resign my membership of the People's Democratic Party. And I'm not going to resign alone. And as you can see, I'm here with Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and all the members of our party who are going to go with me. And so today, I have formally resigned my membership of the People's Democratic Party for very obvious reasons. I'm grateful to all my friends and supporters who have stood by us and with us.
The governor consulted me several times to his credit. And I was not convinced because I didn't see any compelling reason for a second-term governor to defect. No reason. And we know the issues in the PDP, but issues are there to be solved by the governors and the leaders. Have they not been the leaders of the parties? And if we don't succeed in retrieving the PDP, in saving the PDP, then we'll be part of a collective decision which again should not be the ruling party, because I believe there must be opposition. A democracy without opposition ceases to be democracy. It becomes dictatorship from that day. It becomes totalitarianism from that day. Position does not mean you have to be fighting. You have to be, here am I, supporting the president's nomination. By the Constitution, it is the responsibility of the president to forward a name of INEC chairman to us, and he has done that. I know there are people who say a president who is partisan should not have that power, but that is not the law as it is. That is the law as it ought to be, probably.
Well, so yesterday we saw the resignation of the current governor of Bayelsa State, Governor Diri, resigning his membership of the PDP, but not yet declaring which party he's going to be signing up for or signing up to, as the case might be. Because a few days ago, we saw the resignation and defection of the governor of Enugu State, Peter Umba, to the All Progressives Congress. And we're told that is signaling another gale of defections, that we'll be seeing a number of other governors leaving alongside himself. So it was no surprise when we saw the governor of Bayelsa resign yesterday. However, shall I say it's clear or it's unclear where he's headed to? Is he going to change his mind? Will he? Because he's expected to defect to the APC. It's not yet clear if he's made that decision. But you saw him announce that not just himself, but also his cabinet members are resigning alongside him. Now, it raises very fundamental questions, because you just heard the governor, the former governor of Bayelsa, who is now a senator at the federal level, federal legislator, Seriake Dixon, saying he doesn't see the reason that Doyodiri is a second-term governor. So he doesn't see the reason why a second-term governor should be defecting. And he also goes on to talk about democracy, etc., why a very strong opposition is needed. Well, this is where we are. We do not know how many more people will be resigning their membership of the PDP or of any other political party at that. But I'm looking at the implications. And to take a second look at that with me this morning is Mr. Laolu Akode, who is a former presidential aide and also the presenter of Channels Television's Inside Sources. It's good to see you this morning. Good to see you, Mark. It's the second time we're going to be talking about defection. Remember, we had this conversation where we saw the governors of Delta and Akwa Ibom defect, and we're told then that, oh, many more will be joining up much later, and it was seen that we're seeing the second tranche. I hate to use that term, but I can't seem to find another term for what we're now beginning to see. And as he did say, Seriake Dixon say, he is unclear as to what the need for this really is. For those who are running for a second term, perhaps you can excuse them because of the uncertainty within the leadership of the PDP. But for those who already have their ticket in place, they're doing their second term already, what exactly would you say could be the motivation?
Well, I think we should say it again, that there has been a decline of a very significant decline, you know, particularly on this half of the Fourth Republic, of the control and the power, influence of political parties as a platform, you know, in Nigeria's politics. You know, so people don't really respect the political party as they ought to be. The political party does not assert itself, you know, even in issues of policy making. So political parties have essentially become what some people have described as special purpose vehicles, SPVs. You know, just to get into office. And once that happens, you know, anybody can do whatever they like, you know. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, of course, again, which we have to say again, is that Nigeria's politics is not dominated by any sincere commitment to public interest. Our politics is dominated by you know, overly. It's dominated overly by the personal aggrandizement. What happens to me? What can I get in it?
Yeah, but when you become a governor,
yeah,
if one would think that we will be past that stage, what happens to you? How? I mean, what happens to you? Is it when you leave office or when you are in office? I mean, governors are really powerful people. There are only 36 of them at any given time.
Yeah,
so what exactly will be scaring a governor that will make him think what will happen to him?
Yeah, they are extremely powerful, but and you raised the very question, what will scare them? You know, so we're going to find out, you know, specific details, but I think it is easy to guess what is happening now. There is a move to the governing party in the center. And you must remember that even between 1999 and 2015, when the PDP were in charge in the center, we had, I think, about 3 or 4 of such defections during that 16-year period altogether. You know, and now APC has been in power for probably about 10 years. You know, they seem to have, they are beating the record of, you know, attracting. Yeah, probably, you know, because they say there's more that is coming, and they still have about another 2 years before election. So my point is that Nigerian political behavior is not driven by, even not significantly driven by national interest. You know, and you raise a very good question that what does the governor really, why can't the governor stand? And we have to say this, you know, there was one governor, you know, who stood, you know, and today is the president. What surprises me is that these other chaps, aren't they, you know, looking at that example, you know, in terms of being strategic, in terms of keeping the focus, in terms of ensuring that there are alternative platforms. You know, there was no way Bola Ahmed Tinubu would have become president if he had shifted to PDP in those very tough days when he was the only one left after the 2003 elections. I'm surprised that all these governors that are jumping ship, you know, they are going to a guy who stood firm. It's one of the things that I find very curious. And to your question, you know, it would be good to understand, you know, like the people in Ibadan, we say, you know, I mean, what's really wrong with you guys?
When he was defected, the governor, he said, you know, I'm defecting, or sorry, I'm resigning for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we don't quite know what obvious reasons. Okay, obviously you're defecting to the APC. Is that the obvious reason, or is there another reason that we don't see?
I think Governor D was not able to muster the courage, you know, and the boldness behind what he's doing, and so he had to make it obscure and try to make it appear as if it's something that he had to do anyway.
No, because he's leaving us to fill in the blanks. Yeah. I mean, he was courageous enough to come on TV to say, I'm resigning my membership and I'm going with my cabinet. He could have written a letter. The press the letter would have been leaked to the press, and that will be that. That's how we get to know that he resigned. But he actually held a press conference, you know, to state his resignation.
Well, you know, let's just agree that that is not a demonstration of boldness or courage at all.
Okay, but do you think that he could have problems, though? Because his state is quite an interesting state. When Governor Doyediri came into power, he ran against, I'm trying to remember the name of the gentleman who was actually elected governor. Yeah. Who lost his seat as a result of problems of his deputy governor's certificate, etc. Right. And that was what, you know, brought him up at the Supreme Court. Right. He won on the day, or just the day before the swearing in. So, I mean, and then we saw him fight a battle to retain his seat in the second term. And now you hear, you know, the immediate predecessor, Seriake Dixon, saying he doesn't see the reason. Unlike what we saw in Enugu State, where when Peter Mba defected, we saw Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi behind him, we saw Sullivan Chime. So we saw big wigs in Enugu behind him. It looked like the entire political family was moving. Do you think that we could be seeing problems in Bayelsa as a result of what is happening?
Well, first, I think we have to commend, you know, Senator Seriake Dixon's boldness to come into the open to say that he didn't see any compelling reason. You know, which goes back to what we were talking about. You know, the guy just fired.
Yeah, because he said obvious reasons.
Yeah. You know, so obvious reasons that, you know, your guess is as good as mine kind of stuff, which is very confusing. But Dixon made it clear that he wasn't even persuaded. He didn't see what was compelling for Senator Diri, the governor of Bayelsa State, to shift party. As a matter of fact, some lawyers are saying, that so he has left PDP, but he hasn't joined any party. So on what platform is he currently the governor of Bayelsa State? So it's quite a bit of confusion.
Can he be partyless?
Yeah. So that's what some lawyers are beginning to argue, that what's the basis? So on what platform are you there? We don't have independent candidacy yet in our constitution. So you have left PDP and you haven't told us where you are going. Even the question of all those shifts, of course, like I said, it happened under PDP's regime, but we really have to sort it out, whether it's even proper. Because don't forget that in the case of Amechi, Amechi did not even stand for election, if you remember, because, Obasanjo and the rest of them find a way to get him out. He was even so scared, he ran away to Ghana. Wike was the guy that had the fought for him, until the Supreme Court said that, well, yes, PDP won, but, it's the PDP that won the election, but this is the guy that holds the ticket of the PDP. And that was how he came to become governor. In the first time, he wasn't on the ballot. And that shows that it's the party, is the
that
party.
wins election.
Yeah, that wins election. So now all these guys are leaving the party, the platform that wins election. He talks to the fact that we have really become so confused, as a people, especially in politics, that anything goes. It's becoming much like a Jankara market.
But you haven't quite answered the question as to whether you see political problems brewing in Rivers, because this will also cause some, let's say, political upsets. In Delta State, for instance, we were initially wondering whether, the leader of the APC in the state was going to give up his seat. And we heard the current Minister of Aviation, Festus Keyamo, call the current governor, my leader, and, it seemed that was sorted, and, there's been no rancor whatsoever. Right. In Bayelsa, however, we could see a different kettle of fish. First, we know that all of these people in the PDP have been one big family, so that's going to cause a major division there. But then, acceptance into the, assuming you were defecting to the All Progressives Congress, what ripples do you think that would cause in terms of rearrangement of the political hierarchy?
It has started already with Senator Seriake Dixon going to the public to say that he wasn't persuaded about it, and that he will remain in the PDP. So there's going to be quite a bit of tension there, because he will have some loyalists, the governor will have more loyalists, but I don't know where Dixon is going to get the resources, to go head-to-head with the governor in the state. I heard, somebody speak on TV this morning and say that Bayelsa State is just the only business that happens in Bayelsa State is politics. And the governor is in charge, So, yes, I expect some ripples. But looking at the nature of our politics, I think it's going to be more of people lining behind the governor, and leaving, somebody like Dixon, out dry in the sun.
Ayo, I don't know if you have any further questions in this conversation.
Well, thank you, Mawakwa. The only concern I have, Mr. Konde, is what we are saying to the next generation of Nigerians. Maybe we want to first of all speak to the political culture that we may have lost or that we need to build. In the First Republic, I don't know if you can take us back in those times, whether we had such ease of cross-carpeting without any backlash from the people. In the Second Republic, whether there was such a thing. We didn't really get off the ground in the Third Republic, but you may also speak to that. What values, political cultural values that we have lost over time, that we have gained over time, particularly with all of this gale of, I don't know whether to call it cross-carpeting or defection or resignation from political parties or whatever.
Yeah, very good question, Ayo. The truth of the matter is that we haven't had it in previous republics, first, second, and third, which was actually short-lived, as bad as now in terms of the decline of the place and the influence of political parties. It used to be that the political parties were much stronger. They held the politicians more tightly. You know, all of that seems to be going, disappearing. So when we compared, you know, what is happening now, it just shows that there's a decline in party politics, you know, clearly. Now, but to the very first part of your question, which I'm glad that you asked, you know, as to what will the young people make out of this, what kind of lessons is being taught, you know, I think young people, you know, and I had, this is interesting because I had a conversation just about, you know, a day or two with young people about some of these things. And I said, look, young people must go beyond just, you know, complaining about what is happening. Many of these folks, you know, or many of the folks in Nigeria's history, they took hold of the situation in much younger ages. You know, Obafemi Awolowo became premier, started the party at 39, Sardauna Bello started the party at 41, and Nnamdi Azikiwe, same thing, you know, 39, 40. In fact, Gowon became head of state in his early 30s. You know, Dietes Piff became governor at 24. So young people have to decide for themselves what kind of future that they want to have. You know, and my take is that, look, it is time to stop the lamentations. The lamentations ought to be over. We have seen the pattern of politics as it's being played today in our nation. The question is no longer, you know, like Karl Marx said, the problem of the world is not to explain it. The problem is to change it. Young people must begin to define paths, how they will change the future of the country, which is their future. And that is the kind of stuff that even somebody...
Yeah, my sincere apologies, Mr. Akonde. Just a quick one. Yesterday was National Reputation Day, as you know, declared by the Nigeria Reputation Management Group. And part of what they were saying was calling on citizens themselves. How significantly do you see this new culture, so to speak, affecting our national reputation and affecting the trust quotient of the people-government relationship that's dwindled over time?
The level of mistrust and distrust between the people in government and the people outside, I can imagine, you know, we've not taken empirical figures as yet, but I can imagine that it has gotten worse and is very low. And you know, the consistency of this kind of behavior on the part of politicians will continue to bring a further decline and diminishing of public trust for good reasons. So we already know that in terms of, and it's going to affect the reputation of the country itself, you know, but good thing, we have quite a lot of other positive things that we can talk about our country and its future and the kind of people that are there. But my ultimate point, Ayo, and I would like to stress this as I close, is that we have to change the trajectory of our country, not by continuing to be complaining about the games and the antics of politicians. We have to start to organize, get people to vote, get young people to get involved. You know, the least that we should do as the people is to get to vote, not just to become armchair critics. You have all kinds of Nigerians on groups, you know, on all kinds of platforms. We know the problems and everybody is complaining. We need to start to organize. And it starts by at least registering. People have to get involved in the political process by ensuring that they can vote.
Interesting. So now you just took it out of my mouth. I mean, they can vote, and today the Senate will be screening a new INEC chairman.
Right.
Quick expectations for what the Senate is going to do today and your agenda for him.
Well, you know, I think we know what is going to happen is going to be confirmed. And from what we have had, you know, quite a bit of very significant endorsement has come the way of Professor Amupiton. You know, people have said he's a gentleman, you know, he's a man of integrity, he's an outstanding law professor and all of that. So, you know, I don't see any problem. What I think is important is, like you asked, what should he do? He has the duty, the very onerous duty, very uphill task, to recreate a trustworthy relationship between the Nigerian electorate, as a matter of fact, the Nigerian people, and INEC. The regime of the tenure of Professor Yakubu brought quite significant damage to that, because they promised and overpromised and significantly underdeveloped. And until he left, he never explained it. So Professor Amupiton, his first task is to restore the trust and confidence of Nigeria in INEC.
Well, we'll see how that eventually is brought out in a conversation that he has with the National Assembly, particularly the Senate today. We have to thank you very much for coming on the program. Mr. Laula Konde,
thank you so much.
the former presidential aide and also the presenter of Channels Television's Inside Sources. Well, that's where we wrap up Thursday's edition of Sunrise Daily. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Maukbe Ogri Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makine, still with Channels Television Business.